Thank you and welcome to Planning Committee. Sorry for the delay. We'll get on top of the technology at some point. Okay, thank you. So item 1, can we have substitutes nominated, please?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Lynn substituting for Councillor Shukat.
Thank you. And can I remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they may have in relation to items included on the agenda. Item 3, it is not recommended that the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the items of business on this agenda. Item 4 is the minutes of the meetings of the Planning Committee 1 held on the 25th of February 2020 to be approved as a correct record. Members looked at those, and thank you, Colin. I assume that's a second. Yeah. And seconded, sorry, I didn't see. Anybody second that? Paul? Welcome, Paul. Okay, thank you. So on to item 6. Sorry, well, I can work my technology. And that's the first planning application, which is number 19/01483 in North Orham and Shelf, which is removal of conditions 3, 4 and 5 on planning application 11-00804 at Swalesmoor Farm. And can we have the officer's presentation, please?
Sorry, apologies, Chair. We haven't done the withdrawn applications.
Baines, you wish to speak? Sorry, everybody's frozen. Councillor Baines?
Yeah, for Swalesmoor, I was just going to
Is it just me? I can't hear you. I'll see you.
Ward Councillor. I am likely to know some of the people who are of the public who are representing it, but I have not discussed this with any of them.
Okay, thank you very much. Richard?
Sorry, yes. I don't think we've done the withdrawn applications because there is one.
Yes,
there is one withdrawn application, Chair. It is application, it's the first application on the list, 19//01051, Heberland Mill. That's been withdrawn from the agenda tonight on account of, essentially for legal reasons, on account of ambiguities in relation to the plans. So that application will be brought back to a later planning committee with clearer drawings.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'd forgotten about that one. So can we move on to the planning applications we have before us? Thank you. Sorry, Anita, you're on silent. Are you presenting? Who's presenting? Thank you, Anita.
Thank you. Can you hear me now, Councillor?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Could you just bear with me? I've just had a bit of a nightmare. I want to get back to the beginning. Right. Afternoon, members. This proposal seeks the removal of condition 3, measures to control outdoor emissions from building 4 and 9. Condition 4, improvements to pedestrian facilities at junction of Swalesmoor Road and Queensby Road. And condition 5, scheme of vehicular improvements to southern side access of planning permission 11/00804. 2 objections have been received. The principle of development was established in 2010, which was subsequently amended and approved under Plan Permission 2018/00804, including the reorientation of Shed 4 and the relocation of Shed 9. To update committee, Shed 9 has not been constructed and Shed 4 takes in food waste and is regulated by the Environmental Health Team. This is just to show you the site of Swellsmore Road. Swellsmore Farm operates as a specialist industrial location operated by the Leo Group and its associated businesses. It deals with the sorting and recovery of a wide range of waste materials, including animal byproducts. The site also accommodates pet food manufacturing facilities and the business's fleet of commercial vehicles. Paragraph 183 of the NPPF makes it clear that the focus of planning policies and decisions should be on whether the proposed development is an acceptable use of land. And this has been established under the previous 2 planning permissions, rather than the control of processes or emissions, where these are subject to separate pollution control emissions. Planning decisions should assume that these regimes will operate effectively. The site is covered by environmental permits issued by the Environment Agency and a further permit issued by Environmental Health. Environmental Health have been consulted and confirmed that the site operators have in place an odour management plan as required by the environmental permit, covering the wider site, including Building 4. This plan, which is available for inspection by officers when required, includes procedures for monitoring odour, responses to complaints, and taking steps to remedy problems that may give rise to odour off-site. In light of this, they consider that Condition 3 duplicates the permits and raises no objections to its removal. Moving on to Conditions 4 and 5, the Highways Authority were consulted on the 2010 and 2011 applications, to which they provided the following comments. The increase in floor area does not represent an increase in capacity that would lead to significant road safety issues over and above the existing situation. Some improvements would be beneficial to the site access, and conditions should be considered for any subsequent approvals. That's any subsequent approvals. Paragraph 55 of the NPPF makes it clear that planning conditions should be kept to a minimum and only be used where they satisfy the 6 tests. Now, I've set those out on page 27 of the report for councillors. In this instance, the conditions are not required for the development and do not meet the tests. Highways have been consulted and have raised no objections to their removal and concur that the situation should be revisited for any subsequent applications. Committee are therefore recommended to permit the application with the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. Members, any questions for officers?
How do I get to my Facebook back?
I can't see anybody putting their hand up. Oh, Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question there. Clearly, we've had a lot of complaints about this site in the past with regards to odour. Now, then, the removal of Condition 3 could that create more odour, or is it likely to reduce the odour? Thank you, Chair.
Officers.
The removal of the condition, the first condition we spoke about, the actual site is Environment Agency, and they are in control of the odour situation. It's a complex site. There's a number of operations, and there's different things that could potentially create odour. Over and above that, there are other operations outside the site which are beyond the planning permission, which also have in the past created odour. There's no reason why removal of the condition should change the situation.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Sorry about this. We'll work out how to turn this off. Thank you. Any further questions? No, okay, thank you very much. And we don't have any representations attending?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. In that case, any proposals or comments from members? Councillor Hutchinson, then Councillor Bellinger, please.
I propose. I can't see any reason why we shouldn't follow officers' recommendations under these circumstances, and I'd like to propose that we do.
I'm sorry, but my screen's frozen again.
Right. Sorry, I'll repeat. I can't see any reason why we should not follow officers' recommendations, and I propose that we do.
Thank you. Councillor Bellinger?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to second that proposal.
Any amendments? Cannot see any proposals. In that case, we'll go to the vote on following officers' recommendations. All those in favour? Have we got that? Okay, we've got those. Any against? Any abstentions? No. In that case, that's passed following officers' recommendations. Thank you very much. Next item. Brief voice. Is planning application 20/00240. Again, North Arham and North Arham and Shelf, and it's a proposal for a gas peaking electricity generation plant and 5 megawatt battery storage facility on Swalesmoor Farm, Swalesmoor Road, Halifax. Can we have the officer's presentation, please? Sorry, Councillor Baines.
Yeah, just to confirm that my declaration of interest goes for this one as well, not just the first application. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Who's doing the presentation?
It's mine, Councillor.
Anita. Okay, thank you.
It won't be a moment. How do I get that over there? I want that one. I want to upload that so I can share it. Okay, I'll consider the committee. Councillor, can you see that presentation?
No, sorry, can't see anything. Ah, it's coming now.
Right,
Yes, it's there.
right. Have you got it in full? Or have
No, you need to do full screen.
right? Just bear with me, please.
Okay.
That's different to that one. Which one are you after?
I want that on there.
That's the right one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just having a little bit of a technical nightmare. No.
Who's your sharing thing again?
I need to try
Yes.
press the cross, the X on the slides outline bar on the left hand side. That should minimise
Okay.
that.
Ah, have you got that in full now? if I'll start then. Can I just draw members' attention to page 46 of the report and the last paragraph, the line before the last line there, where it says to fill the gap. If you could delete the words after that. The reason being is that I've had advice from legal officers that that condition wouldn't meet the 6 tests as set out in the NPPF. The proposal comprises 2 interconnecting elements, a battery storage facility and a gas-powered electrical generation system with associated infrastructure including substation, gas network meter and governor installation, welfare and communications units. The application has been referred to committee at the request of Councillor Caffrey, and 27 letters of objection and an objection from the Shipton Valley Society have been received, as set out here. No objections have been raised from statutory consultees or Bradford Council. Just bear with me. The site is within the Greenbelt. The proposed development is not considered inappropriate development in the Greenbelt because it is considered to be infill development as set out in paragraph 145 of the NPPF, bullet point G. It is considered that development will not have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt other than the existing development the site is currently in use for. Sorry, if I could just start that again. It is not considered inappropriate development in the Greenbelt because it's considered to be infill development as set out in paragraph 145, bullet point G of the NPPF. It is not considered that development would have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt than the existing development. The site is currently in use for parking of HGVs, storage of skips, and the sorting of wood associated with the wider operations of the site. The proposed gas generation includes 9 associated stacks. These will be 10 metres in height and 0.3 metres. Sorry, I've just had, no, is that the wrong presentation we got there?
Yes, this is, we've got the 19/014 presentation, not,
yes,
not the subsequent.
I do apologise. Let me just try and correct this. Could you just bear with me? I'll try and to get some technical support to help. Councillor, uploaded the wrong one. Could you get me back to start again? Just get me back to the screen to share.
I don't know where that was. You were in it.
Just get me back to the Zoom page. Right. I think we're there now. Apologies for that, Councillor. Can you hear me now?
I think you've got mute on.
Oh, I don't get the mute off then.
You're not on mute, Anita.
I'm not on mute.
No.
Right. Shall I start again?
Yes. Yeah, and that's the right one. Yeah.
Apologies.
It's okay.
That's okay. I'll start from the beginning just for completeness. If councillors did get my message about the correction in the report, I'll just start on the description of development. The proposal comprises two interconnecting elements: a battery storage facility, a gas-powered electrical generation system with associated infrastructure, including substation, gas network meter, governor installation, welfare and communication units. The application has been referred to committee at the request of Councillor Caffrey. 27 letters of objection and objection from Shibden Valley Society have been received, as set out on the earlier slide, on the previous slide. No objections have been raised from statutory constituencies or Bradford Council. Right, this is the correct slide. It shows you the site of the proposed development, and this over here is the wider site of Swells Moor, which you saw on the previous application. The site is within the green belt. The proposed development is not considered inappropriate development in the green belt because it is considered to be infill development as set out in paragraph 145, bullet point G of the NPPF. It is not considered that development would have a greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the existing development. The site is currently in use for parking of HGVs, storage of skips, and the sorting of wood associated with operations of the site. The proposed stacks associated with the gas peaking plant will be 10 metres in height and 0.3 metres in diameter, and would exceed the height of the adjacent buildings by approximately 1 metre, taking account of the higher elevation of the site, which the proposed units will be placed on. It's considered that they would only have a non-material impact on the openness of the green belt beyond that arising from the existing .
Hi, sorry, I seem to have lost you again, Anita. Can other people hear?
I'm having connections at the moment.
Either, Chair.
My connection is a little bit unstable. I don't know if it's the size of the presentation I'm trying to stream over. Have you got me back now?
Yes.
Right. Just to repeat, the development will satisfy the environmental objectives of sustainable development set out in the NPPF and is supported by national planning policy statements for energy and fossil fuel, insofar as it would support the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Just to give you a further clearer view of the site here, this is the wider Swells Moor site. And this here is the proposed battery storage and gas peaking plant. This is Rigby Lane running along the site here, which is public right of way, and Swells Moor Road along here. The proposed development will cover approximately 4% of the total area of the site. Now, this is where you've got the difference in site levels. This is the majority site here, and at the back here, you can see this would be the location of the battery storage and the gas peaking plant, and it's approximately 4 metres high, higher than the main part of the site, although the main part of the site does undulate a little bit. And this is the main building, which it will be adjacent to. The Battery storage facility would comprise 4 shipping containers and provide a mechanism for storage of electrical charge generated on site by the renewable energy facilities they have. This is known as a behind the meter technology. So these would be the battery storage area here. It would also act as a grid balancing service. So when energy prices are cheap, they can import electric charge and charge these batteries and then re-export it when required to the national grid. The gas peaking plant, which is this here, will comprise of 9 containers with associated infrastructure, including the stacks, and I've got a larger plan to follow. And there is a number of other units here, which are those associated with the switching into the electricity grid, the gas grid, and welfare and connectivity. The gas peaking plant would provide peak demand energy to supplement the less reliable renewable power sources. So at peak times, if the renewables who are generating electricity for the grid fail or cannot supply the sufficient electricity, this gas powered units here will come into action and generate electricity to feed into the network. The applicant has indicated that the units have a potential to operate for 3,000 hours per annum, and typically between the hours of 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night. Now that is a maximum and it is specifically on demand when required. It would not generate unless there is a need for that power. This slide shows in detail the gas peaking plants to give you an idea of the generators will be held in these container units, which are 18.2 metres in length and 3 metres in height. And then from the base of the unit to the top of the stack would be 10 metres. To give you a view of the site itself, you see the site comprises of a number of very large sheds. There is a bund on this side here, bundle here, and the foreground here is Rigby Lane, and to the rear of the site is Swellsmore Road, and this will be where the units will be located. So again, these are drone models of the site to give you some context about their location. The applicant has provided a visual landscape impact assessment, and the following slides give you an idea from a number of viewpoints. Just bear with me. Sue's asking me a question. I appear to have a problem. Can councillors hear me still?
Yes, coming across fine.
I can hear you fine.
I'm not too sure of the presentation. Sue's just said she had a problem. I'll continue.
I think that's a problem with her connection.
Right, that's fine then. I'm a bit conscious of this. The Council's Conservation Officer has been consulted and confirms that they concur with the heritage assessment submitted as part of the application. That the location of development would not be visible in views across the Shibden Valley, forming part of the wider setting of the Grade 2 style listed Scout Hall. And as I was trying to explain, the applicant has submitted a visual impact assessment, and the following slides give you some viewpoints across the site, and I'll just run through those for you. So here we've got, apologies for spelling, Shibden Valley, views across, looking west from House Lane. The development as it stands is on the horizon, some distance away. Now this is looking south along Rigby Lane, and it's probably the most visible location to actually see the development. So you've got the sheds and the bunds here. This here would be where the stacks would be. Obviously, they will be in line. So from this point here, they would appear as one stack. And further up the development, and then you would see the 9 stacks in line. And again, looking back up the site, the developments over here, again, you may just about see a 1 stack because you'll see them again, there'll be one all in line. From Shea Lane, from Orphan Roper Lane. And from the bottom, you've got this, the ski centre is down here, and this is looking up on the site. And because of the topography of the site, you wouldn't see the development from there. As I explained, there's a 6-metre bund along Rigby Lane. The applicant has recently planted a number of semi-mature trees along there. At the request of our countryside officer, additional planting of native species shrubs is now to be included, and a condition for that has been recommended and included in the conditions that are listed in the report. Environmental health have been consulted, just bear with me. And they've raised no objections to the application. They note that it would be permitted under environmental regulations. Whilst it's disputed that the development itself is not renewable energy, it does, however, facilitate the use of renewable energy by enabling its storage and capture for later use, and also for generating power when renewables are unavailable, or when there is a particularly high demand, that these units can be brought into use very quickly, where it's more difficult to bring renewable energy sources at the present time into use at a short demand. However, the proposal is considered to contribute, as I say, to renewable energy by virtue of providing energy storage and backup. Development is not considered inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and will not conflict with the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt or impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. The application is therefore recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you. Can you take down the presentation so that we can see the members?
Just bear with me.
Thank you. Members, any questions for officers at this stage? Councillor Bellinger, Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think a little bit of naivety here, really, from me. I'm just trying to get a little bit of an understanding of how the gas is actually produced. What is it? Is it through the burning of something? I don't understand. And what sort of gas is it actually going to emit?
Councillor, sorry, apologies if I didn't quite pick that out for you. It will burn gas from the reason it's located here is because it's a high power gas main. So it will generate gas, use gas from the grid and convert that to electricity. The emissions are set out in the air quality assessment. The reason that the air quality assessment has been set at 3,000 hours is because that gives the worst case scenario for outputs of carbon monoxide and you know, normal emissions you'd expect to see.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check my arithmetic? 3,000 hours a year, if you're working 5 days a week, is equivalent to running it 10 hours a day. That doesn't sound like backup to me. That sounds as if it's the main source of generation.
Yes, Councillor, I understand where you're coming from.
Yes, Councillor Lynn.
The reason that it's set at 3,000 hours is because that it has a certain amount of hours of usage has to be set for the permitting regime. And to keep planning and permitting in parallel, they've taken the 3,000 hours which they would submit under permitting. You'd understand that for these to generate electricity, they have to buy in the gas and then obviously sell on the electricity to the grid. It's unlikely they would use these unless they have got a market for the electricity. So the 3,000 hours is a maximum, and the hours where they're most likely to be used are between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m, especially on a winter's night. So it's really is it is not a system you would use just to generate electricity unless you've got a market for it, because there's a cost input in using the gas in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lynn. Sorry, Jenny, you need to put your speaker on. Jenny, you're still on silent. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought you as chair were unmuting me. Yes, I just wanted to be clear, Anita, about the section in your report which relates to the presumption in favour of use of renewable energy, given our commitment, not just as an authority but the government's commitment. And I just wanted to be absolutely clear. We're not saying here what we're seeing here in this proposal is a proposal for, if you like, backup, which, in other words, that the company are seeking to do what I imagine all of us here would want them to do, which is to use renewable energy through solar and so on, but recognising that the sun doesn't always shine, and that they may not always have enough electricity to cope with their 24/7 operations as a manufacturing plant. And so it's backup for that, and therefore, although I think you do explain that in your report, if I've understood it correctly, although it's not, you know, the gas plant itself is obviously not renewable energy, it's fossil fuel energy, but it's only to be used to support and come into play when there isn't sufficient electricity generated from the solar panels. Have I got that right?
Yes, you have got that right. I mean, technology at the moment is not there for us to fully be reliable on renewable energy sources. That is a whole mix, and the government recognises that gas peakers will be required in the short term, maybe 15, 20 years, as we move to more and more reliable renewable energy sources. Battery power there, as I explained, has a twofold. It has what we call a behind the meter system, which is really storage on site existing renewable energy. So when they've got an excess on site, they can store it for themselves. It doesn't go into the grid. They can reuse it on site themselves. The gas peaking plant has both way. It can provide power to the site itself, or it can be used by National Grid to take up that emergency generation that's needed when we or put our cup of tea on during the World Cup all at once, or whether there is an issue with renewable energies and they're just not producing enough for the demand that's in the system. Now, the government policy very much acknowledges that this is technology they're required at the moment, but moving forward in the future, that this should eventually become obsolete, like fossil fuel energy.
Thank you. Councillor Clark and then Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. So is gas already on the site?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes,
right,
it is.
And you wouldn't need any further lines of...
No, no.
Right, okay, that's fine. One of the things that it says is that only 6 meters of these stacks would be visible. Well, that's nearly 30 feet. That's quite a lot.
It is. I think there's 2 things about this. Because the actual the location units where they are on a slightly higher elevation than the remaining of the rest of the site. The adjacent building is very large, and they would be approximately a metre above that adjacent building.
Okay.
Visibility.
Can I just come back with that? I live in Illingworth, and we can see the building.
Yes.
From Illingworth, and this will raise the height of the site, maybe by 1 metre, but nevertheless it's raising the height. Does it have to be that high?
Generally speaking, stacks have to clear the height of adjacent buildings or trees. That is why you've got that metre there. Depending on the orientation, you either see 1 stack or you'll see the 9, because they're all 9.
I think this area is the only area that would see all 9 stacks. I think everywhere else it would be sort of off the side, whereas you can see them side by side.
They are fairly slim. They're 0.3 metres in diameter, quite a slim stack.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a 20 megawatt capacity of generation that's being proposed. What is the generation capacity of the solar array that is present on the roofs of the sheds?
I'm afraid I haven't got that information.
I couldn't find it in the report. It's just that I have a question about the green credentials of this means of generation using gas. The report suggested that the plant would operate at a lower carbon emission rate than other gas power stations. But given that half the electricity in this country is generated by renewables at the moment, really, if the alternative if it is to power that plant, the alternative is for them to use mains electricity, because they're saying that their plant would operate at 0.3 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. But the average last year for mains electricity was 0.24 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour, which is pretty well equivalent, if not a bit lower, than the carbon output from this these proposed measures. I can quite understand the use of the need for battery storage to supplement the solar arrays, but I'm not quite sure it sounds more as if this is a power plant to generate electricity for the grid at times of peak demand, rather than necessarily being for the need of the waste processing plant itself. I'd just like some clarification that I'm wrong.
Sorry to interrupt, but is this actually a question that we need to ask the agent, as it's considerable technical stuff and not a planning matter? I mean, in that sense, it is a planning matter, but it's not. It's actually something I think the agent might be able to answer better than planning officers. Okay, Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question there for Anita. Do we know how much noise that these generators are likely to create, and could it be a nuisance for any neighbours within the area? I know it's quite sparsely populated around the site up there, but could it be a nuisance, especially on the
that has been looked into by Environmental Health, and they consider that it wouldn't be a nuisance. The battery storage and the generators would be enclosed in attenuated containers. So they're not, although we describe them as shipping containers, they're not just plain metal, they are soundproofed.
Okay, right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for officers? No, thank you. Sorry. Right. Okay. In that case, we have an objector who wishes to speak. Has Sue managed to rejoin us?
I have rejoined Chair, and I've just promoted Mr. Roger Lee to become a panelist, so he should be joining us shortly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Lee, can you unmute and start your video?
Yeah.
There we go. Good afternoon.
Hello, can you all hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Shall I carry on?
Yeah.
Well, firstly, I'm speaking on behalf of the Shibden Valley Society today. I'll make the following points objecting to the application. As has been pointed out, the area of land subject of the application is currently used for HGV parking, storage of containers and wood processing. That's set out in the officer's report. However, is this a lawful use of the land? There doesn't seem to be anything set out in the planning history section of the report, which refers to this use being authorised or having any background or any certificates associated with it. There is quite a lengthy history to the site. And I think it's an important point, as if the officer's view is that this application falls within the definition of infill development, then the status of the land and its authorised use is crucial to that interpretation. And it does seem a strange view to me to take this as infill development. That's not the position that the applicant has approached the proposal from. Like the Shibden Valley Society, their starting point is that it's inappropriate development, but they consider that there are very special circumstances to support the development. That said, those circumstances are brief and limited in context. The reality is that there's a significant level of development involved. 9 peaking plant structures, 4 containers, a welfare building, a substation, a DNO station, a transformer unit. The peaking plants would have a total footprint of 440 square metres, a total volume of 1,500 cubic metres. In addition, they would each have a chimney projecting to a height of 10 metres from ground level, acknowledging what's been said in the presentation about the actual visual height. But even if infill development, there will be a significant impact on the openness of the greenbelt as a result of that scale of development, and therefore a conflict with one of the key elements of the NPPF on greenbelt, such that the development cannot be considered to be appropriate. The report states that this isn't a renewable energy development, it's a renewable energy facilitator rather than a generator. So it's difficult to see how it fits in the hierarchy of renewable energy resources in local and national planning policy. If the demand for the proposed medium peak plants is as critical as has been suggested, why is there no supporting comment from the national grid? With regard to air quality and noise pollution, the Society has commissioned an independent review of the application by specialist consultants. This highlighted that the air quality assessment failed to include emissions from traffic to and from the site, and it failed to carry out any local monitoring of background air levels. In terms of noise, the independent review concluded that noise levels have been underestimated. The consultation response from the Council's Environmental Health Officer raised a number of discrepancies in the noise assessment, most notably the lack of data, but despite this, no objections were raised. I'm not sure of the significance of the visual impact assessment that you were presented with, other than to address special landscape area issues. It doesn't carry significant weight in terms of greenbelt policy. So the Society's view is that the application represents inappropriate development without very special circumstances. There's harm to the special landscape area and unresolved air quality and noise issues. Given this, the Society would ask that the application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Get the screen back. Yes. Members, have you got any questions for the objector? Councillor Baines. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank
Councillor-
you. Lee, could you just confirm what the Shibden Bally's levels, noise levels are? You just said they were different. You know, what is the difference? Is it small or is it a large difference?
No, I don't think it was a case that they came up with their own noise levels. It was more a review of the noise assessment that had been done, and I think one of the points that came out of that, which was shared, I think, from the council's EHO, was that the noise levels had been underestimated in the report. Other than that, I don't have any sort of data different to that.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard Seaman, you wish to come in? Richard, yes.
Yes, could I just come in on a point of clarification? Obviously, the Mr. Lee refers to an independent assessment of the air quality and noise that's been commissioned on behalf of the objectors. Obviously, in considering it, members do need to bear in mind that obviously it has been commissioned on the behalf of objectors, so possibly calling it independent might not be the most appropriate way to describe it. But if members do have any concerns about the council's assessment of air quality and noise, we do have our environmental health officers who can be brought in to answer specific queries, but certainly my understanding is that they considered the applicant's assessment and have made no objections in the light of that. But members may wish to direct questions to the council's environmental health officers.
Thank you. Have any members got any further questions for Roger? I can't see any hands. No. Okay. Thank you very much, Roger. Well, I think we'll take you down, or whatever the phrase is for this. We'll step down. And we have, sorry, trying to run 3 machines at once here. Councillor Caffrey wishes to speak. Is Councillor Caffrey on?
Yes, Chair, I'm just bringing him in now.
Okay, thank you.
Am I beamed up yet? Have I been beamed up?
You're beamed up.
Right, okay. Thank you, Chair. This site.
I don't know whether it's me, but I've lost everybody at the moment.
Can you hear me? No.
Nobody's appearing on screen.
It's you, Steve.
Can you just hold fire, Councillor? Just one.
Okay.
Oh, you're back, Chair.
I'm back. Yeah, Councillor Caffrey, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This site is, as you know, part of the Green Belt. It's shown the council's own site as most sensitive Green Belt area. It's also, as discussed in the projected Shibden Valley. I think under current planning law, developers need to demonstrate very special circumstances if projects are to proceed. These special or permitted circumstances are summarised in sections 145, 146 of the NPPF. But I can't see a proposal for this Green Belt site. Doesn't fall into any of these categories excluded. It's been pointed out by objectors that developers need to demonstrate very, very special circumstances if projects of this nature are to be proceed. There's no evidence this application has tried to demonstrate itself any special circumstances, despite numerous professional external reports being submitted. Just moving on to section 147 of the NPPF. Such special circumstances may include environmental benefits associated with increased production of energy from renewable sources, which you could argue this is. But there's no objections, or very few objections as such, to the installation of batteries to store electricity from the solar panels already on site. And some commentators would see the benefit of this initiative. However, the objectors have pointed out that this is a gas-fired electricity generation, not renewable. And there is more generation than just a backup. There's quite a lot of it. It's also been pointed out by the objectors that the use of fossil fuels for energy generation is contrary to the government agenda on renewable energy. And as objectors have also pointed out, the committee will be aware that the final paragraph of the planning officer report states that in January 2019, Calderdale itself declared a climate change emergency, which begs the question, why is it approving this generating plant which emits pollution that's causing the climate change? You could argue on that basis alone, the application should be rejected. I think part of the problem is also this is the influence on the surrounding valley. Many objectors are concerned about the aesthetic effect of the Shibden Valley itself. And I mean, the committee has just seen pictures of the valley, and I'm sure most of them will know it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. And this development is considered to be a real possible blot on the landscape. The stacks, as you know, are 14 metres high. The sector that some of them may not be fully visible on the horizon. However, the lay of the land means that some stacks will be visible. There's some concern from objectors that the reports commissioned by the applicants have been submitted showing simulated pictures of the effect of smokestacks. Well, these might be misleading, as the petitioner, depending where the cameras and drones have been taking the pictures from. And we all know what you can do with cameras if you want to, I think. The Shibden Valley, as you're probably aware, has a number of Grade 2 listed buildings. And residents have pointed out that whilst arguably the stacks can't be seen from these buildings, or not possibly seen from these buildings, it misses the point about the overall settings of Grade 2 listed buildings and the wider views of where they are and why developments are restricted in their locations. The points made that previous planning requirements to shield large developments on this site have not been complied with 2 large sheds still visible on the skyline overlooking the Shibden Valley. On this point, the Swalesmore site is identified as a waste management site in the LDP, not a renewable energy site. I think that's always been raised before. Therefore, this development is outside the current LDP. And finally, residents have highlighted again that air quality is high on the council's agenda. And as such, it should consider that the inevitable emissions will add to deteriorating air quality generally. And particularly when you think about how close Stump Cross is, and that's already bad air around there.
1 minute remaining, Councillor.
Sorry?
You've got 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, that's all right, I won't need that. There's also concern that no independent reports have been submitted or don't appear to have been submitted on the environmental impact. And without that, it's difficult to estimate the amount of heat and carbon dioxide that's going to be emitted. The officer report itself states that the planning authority considers that development does not require an environmental report. And the reason given is because development does not exceed the relevant threshold and is not, repeat, not located in a sensitive area. But earlier, I started off by saying the committee will recall that the council's own designation as this is a most sensitive greenbelt location. The officer's report also says this will...
That's time.
Okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Chair. Chair, you're still muted.
Thank you, Colin. I wondered what was happening. Yes, two officers wish to come in before we go on to further questions to the councillor. So Anita and Richard.
Shall I come in first? Because
yes, Richard,
my
come
points
first.
are likely to be higher level than Anita's more more technical points. Just on Councillor Caffrey referred to the site being an area of outstanding natural beauty. I just have to provide a clarification there, members. The site is within the special landscape area, but the area of outstanding natural, there are no areas of outstanding natural beauty within Calderdale. AOMBs are a particular statutory designation. It's a national designation. On the issue of the green belt, obviously the contention of the officer's report is that it's not necessary to demonstrate very special circumstances because the development falls within the category of appropriate development. And in particular, it's paragraph 145G of the MPPF, which refers to limited infilling or the partial complete redevelopment of previously developed land, whether redundant or in continuing use. Now, that is qualified by a requirement that it doesn't have a greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the existing use. But this site is clearly previously developed, and therefore development that you can describe as infilling within that previously developed area is regarded as appropriate, and therefore from a policy point of view, it's not necessary to demonstrate very special circumstances. Just, I think Anita will probably pick up on the issues of air quality and the environmental report, but on the issue of air quality, obviously there has been modelling done that has been considered by the council's environmental health officer, and members will obviously be aware of the recent decision at the Calder Valley Skip Hire site at the Belmont site, Sorby Bridge, which sort of illustrated how the planning inspectorate would consider that type of issue. But I think it's fair to say that the Calder Valley Skip Hire site, which is in a valley bottom, there was a lot of concern about it being in a valley bottom at the time of the decision making, certainly presented more complicated air quality issues than the current scheme, which clearly sits on, I think if you go west, I think the next highest point is probably, you know, it's as high as you're going to get in that part of Halifax. So members should be mindful of the outcome with the Calder Valley Skip Hire decision. Just on the issue of the environmental report, which Councillor Caffrey refers to, I think that's alluding to what we describe as environmental impact assessment. The development goes through a screening process to establish whether it requires an environmental impact assessment, and Ms Seymour will be able to sort of say more. But in relation to the issue of whether the site's in a sensitive area has a specific definition within the regulations, and this site's not within one of those sensitive areas that's referred to in the environmental impact assessment regulations. But I'll probably pass over to Miss Seymour, who can sort of proceed.
Thank you, Richard.
That's quite correct. Yeah, that's quite correct, Richard. Sensitive areas are things like special areas of conservation, and this doesn't site within one of those, and neither is it in the buffer. The nearest one we got is the South Pennines, further at the other end of the valley, which would be defined as a sensitive area. I think actually Richard's points I was going to cover there about the AMB and the IA regulations, and just to remind the councillors of the MPPF, paragraph 183, which says that plan decisions assume that the regulatory control by other authorities would cover such issues as emissions to air. So, as we previously stated in the report, these units would be permitted by the Environment Agency, and the emissions to air and noise will be covered under the permit, and I'm sure our environmental health will be able to confirm further.
Okay, thank you. Richard wanted to come back in again.
Sorry, one point where I made a slight error a moment ago. I referred to the site being within the special landscape area. It's not actually within the special landscape area, but it's obviously close to the Shipton Valley Special Landscape area. Apologies. So I just wanted to clarify that way.
Okay. Can we go on to questions from members for Councillor Caffrey, please? Any questions? I can't see any hands at the moment. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Caffrey.
Thank you.
And next we have the agent, Tom Wood. Thank you, Sue. Is the agent there?
Just bringing him in now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Wolf, are you there?
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello,
Yes,
yeah,
we
we
can
can hear you. Thank you very much. You've got 5 minutes, please, to make the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Wolf, and I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute and a planning consultant with over 30 years' experience in the public, private and voluntary sectors. I represent the applicant in this matter. The proposal has two elements, the battery storage facility and the peaking plant. The battery element helps the Leo Group store power generated during the day to be used at night. It also provides a micro-balancing function to the grid and guards against power cuts for us all. The peaking plant is required to provide the investment justification for the battery system to connect to the grid, as those costs are very considerable. I wish to concentrate in my submission on the peaking plant element of this proposal because that is the part that most objectors have found controversial. The peaking plant provides a service to the grid and reflects the changes in the national power market, which are no longer contract-based. The new system involves daily auctions to supply power at peak times, which means the returns for these developments are highly volatile. Those changes are designed to bring the cost of power down. Excuse me. Those changes are designed to bring the cost of power down for the consumer, so we will all benefit from the change. The UK is also in transition to a low carbon future, which is led by the closure of large-scale carbon-heavy power plants. The shortfall of power supply is taken up by renewable energy, mostly in the form of wind and solar power. However, as these sources are much less stable and are weather dependent, there needs to be a system that will provide resilience and backup to any shortfall quickly and reliably. Peaking plants do this and are essential in allowing the growth of renewable power in the medium term. Once there is an oversupply of renewable power and the power market has changed to one where gas-powered peaking plants are no longer required or viable to operate, they will be removed. Some people have raised concerns about pollution and the carbon-based fuel for the peaking plant. The peaking plant uses less carbon than the current national grid average, including at startup, and will therefore contribute in a small way to lowering the UK carbon emissions in itself. However, that is not the main benefit of the scheme. The investment required to provide such peaking plants is considerable. The investment needs to occur quickly to allow the national infrastructure to be in a fit state to accept more renewable energy into the grid. As consultants working on solar schemes of many hundreds of megawatts throughout the UK, I know that the greatest barrier to securing more renewable energy is the difficulty of finding connections to the grid, which are capable of accepting a variable supply of power. Put simply, this plant will allow more renewable energy schemes to connect to the grid. I also wish to respond to some of the issues people have raised about very special circumstances in the Greenbelt. Some people have concentrated in a simplistic way on the volume of development as a proxy for discussing the openness of the Greenbelt. In this case, although there are no buildings on the proposal site, it is currently used for storage of equipment and materials, including 2 rows of HGV lorry trailers that are large enough in themselves to be roughly equivalent to or greater than the volume of the proposal. Therefore, the proposal does not increase the volume of development within the Greenbelt or reduce its openness. In any case, the proposal is for the installation of plant and machinery and not built development.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. It is therefore more akin to storage of materials than a new building would be. Regarding the chimney stacks, a volumetric assessment is not suitable, but a visual impact assessment is helpful. The detailed visual appraisal we submitted shows the limited negative effect they would have from all viewpoints. The proposal itself is for the installation of power and equipment within a clearly defined site of previously developed land. As such, it should be considered appropriate under paragraph 145G of the NPPF. In conclusion, the need for the peaking plant is one that stems from the need to decarbonise the UK and to tackle the current climate emergency. This is a necessary phase of the transition to the low carbon future that the National Planning Policy Framework seeks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Can you please wait in case members have got questions? But before they come on, I think Anita wish to come in on a technical point.
Thank you, Chair. I refer back to the committee report, so it's a bit complicated. This is set out on page 39, and it's regarding the wider policy context, and particularly the National Policy Statement for Energy, EM1. Within that, it does explain how fossil fuel generating stations contribute to the security of energy supply by using fuel from a variety of suppliers and operating flexibly. It says that gas will continue to play an important role in the electricity sector, providing vital flexibility to support an increasing amount of low carbon generation and to maintain security of supply. The government acknowledges that we will, for a period of time, have to rely on gas generation to help bridge the gap until such time as renewable energy is in excess. That is also in National Policy Statement for Fossil Fuel-Based Energy Generation. Those two together acknowledge that we need to have a flexibility in response to changes in supply and demand and provide our diversity in our energy mix. And that this mix will play an important role as the UK transitions to a low carbon energy and does not constrain such development.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the agent? Any members? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. We know that the energy mix or the generating mix that is used to power the national grid is rapidly changing, and that there's a much greater proportion of it now that is being generated by non-carbon sources than the carbon source. That there's a much greater proportion of it. I think we need to be clear about what we're talking. I think you've been perfectly clear in your presentation that what we're talking about is a gas-fired power station in the Greenbelt in Calderdale, because it's possible to fire it up quickly and sell electricity at the peak time when you can buy it, you can sell it for most, rather than for powering this specific waste processing plant. With that in mind, last year, the average CO2 production per kilowatt hour generated from grid electricity was 0.24 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. The generating capacity that you're proposing here is 0.3 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour, which is slightly greater. I know it's not a huge amount greater, but it's not significantly less. And so I fail to see the environmental benefit of having a gas-fired power plant in the Greenbelt in Calderdale, I don't see that it is necessarily a climate, contributing an awful lot to reducing climate change, other than compared to having a larger gas-fired power station where they are currently.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. What I would say is that, I mean, I am not an energy specialist, I'm a planning specialist, but the figures I've been given are that these new gas-powered stations do emit slightly less carbon dioxide than the national grid average, and so when it is running, it would be providing a slightly less carbon dioxide than would otherwise be provided. But I think the main benefit of the scheme is to provide the resilience to the grid so that other renewable energy schemes can plug in. The problem we have is that in order to close down the large carbon heavy power plants, you need to have a kind of base load. And if you don't have the base load, you need to have the resilience of smaller plants able to kick in when demand requires it. And this is a necessary part of the transition to a fully renewable future for the UK. So it's a short-term measure in the long run to allow more renewable energy into the grid. And that's why it's so important, and also why it's so important to do it relatively quickly so that other renewable schemes can come online. If you don't have schemes like this, then there simply won't be the capacity within the grid to allow the renewable schemes that we all want to see actually plug in. So it's part of the backup. And the reason that the government has changed to this kind of daily auction for power is in order to reduce the costs for consumers as a whole, and to make these plants as competitive as possible. So they will only operate where they feel that they can, where they've bid to provide the power at a given price on the day or the day before, and that's as much kind of notice as they will have in order to provide the power for us. So with the when you think of it as a resilience measure, and as in the way that the market is set up to operate, it's something that will only happen when the renewables are unable to do it, and it will allow other renewables to come into place. So I hope that answers your question, and you can see that it is a scheme that will lead us towards a low carbon future.
Okay, thank you. Richard wanted to come in at this point.
Yes, if I could just provide a piece of clarification, and this takes us back to the issue of Greenbelt. If we had concluded that the development was inappropriate, it would be necessary to demonstrate very special circumstances. It would be necessary to demonstrate in that respect that there was some kind of overriding planning benefit in connection with the development. As it stands, with the development being appropriate development, there isn't a policy test for the applicant to demonstrate an overall need for the development. So whilst the applicants have set out benefits, and those benefits are clearly material to the application, and if members accept those benefits, those are factors that weigh in favour of granting planning permission. But even then, I wouldn't advise members that it's actually a policy requirement that that the need for the development is proven, because it's essentially it's regarded as appropriate development in the Greenbelt. So the applicant is entitled to sort of take a business decision on what facilities he requires best to operate his business. So I think we just have to be careful about going down the line of seeking some kind of overriding justification from the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any further questions for the agent? I can't see anybody's hands being raised. No, okay. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, members. Comments, proposals? Councillor Hutchinson.
I'd just like clarification from Richard Seaman about saying that as long as it's in line with the applicant's business that they're currently set up, that it's okay for them to pursue whatever they want on that site. Because as far as I'm aware, the applicant's business is waste management and pet food manufacture and things like that. It's not getting into the power generation market. And as I've said before, my concern is that what we're being asked to do is to agree a gas-fired power station within the Greenbelt in Calderdale at a time when we've said that Calderdale really must get away from the carbon economy and contribute our bit to climate change. So it's really just clarification as to whether branching into generation of electricity is still regarded as being within the core business for which that site was given permission in the first place.
Thank you, Richard.
I don't think it's so much a question of whether it's within the core business, although can members hear me okay? Because everyone's
Yes.
frozen. Sorry.
We can hear you.
Fine. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking to myself. It's okay. You're moving again now. I don't think it's so much a case of whether it's within the core business, although clearly the development as a whole does have a clear relationship to the applicant's business. I think the points to stress are that this kind of development receives explicit recognition through the government's national policy statement on energy. That acknowledges that there is a continuing role for gas to play in the sort of mixed economy of energy generation. And the point I was simply making was that with it being appropriate development, there isn't a specific policy requirement to demonstrate a need for the development. Clearly, if people apply for extensions to their houses in the Greenbelt, and that extension is regarded as being a proportionate extension, it's then regarded as appropriate development. And in those circumstances, we don't question why the applicant needs the extension. We just accept that it's appropriate development. Now, if there was a view that this development would fundamentally undermine objectives in relation to climate change and the climate emergency, that would be a different matter. But I think that would be an extremely difficult argument to make, given the information we have from both the applicant and also, as I say, the guidance that the government have produced on renewable energy generation, well, on energy generation in particular, which appears to specifically acknowledge that there is a continuing place for this kind of development.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I understand the point that Councillor Hutchinson is making, but in some ways it would have been great if from a...
I'm sorry, everybody's frozen again.
Oh. Hello.
I can hear you, Jen.
I can't hear anybody.
I think
We can hear you, Chair.
Can hear me. Can you hear me?
Come back on. Yes, thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I was just saying I completely respect the points that Councillor Hutchinson was making, and also the point that Councillor Caffrey was making about environmental considerations in respect of people living in Shibden Valley and so on. But I have to say that I am minded to propose that we should accept the recommendation that this is an acceptable an acceptable application, because whilst I do understand that there's a lot of questions which can be asked about the energy mix in relation to the use of gas, which is a fossil fuel, I also understand that in terms of the use of solar, although it's very sunny outside today, I can see the sun shining through my window. It isn't sunny all the time. So I think the need for a balancing function is absolutely correct. And I also understand that the applicant has been making the case, certainly the applicant's representative, Mr. Wolf, made the case, that it is important that where there are opportunities to contribute to the rebalancing of the demand that the grid has to undertake because of its increasing dependence on renewables, that this plant could make a contribution. So for all those reasons, on balance, I'm happy to propose that we should accept the recommendation of the officer to approve this application, and I so move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lynn. Do we have a seconder? So I have to keep scanning. In that case, I second that motion. We haven't got anyone else. Any amendments? Any proposed amendments? No. Okay, no amendments, no alterations. Then we go to a vote. All those in favour of the proposal to support officers' recommendations, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Okay, that's 3, 4, 2 against. Any abstentions? 1. So 2 abstentions. Thank you. In that case, it's passed that it goes with the officer recommendations. And I don't know if I'm talking to myself again because everybody's just suddenly disappeared off the screen.
No, it's okay, Chair. We can hear you.
You can hear me. Thank you.
And we can see you.
Well, we can see you. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. In that case, we move on to the next application. And can I say before we go on to the last one, can we take a 5-minute break before the last one? Because I think that's going to take quite some time again. And we'll take a comfort break after this. So this one is application 19-01247, in demolition of existing dwelling and residential outbuilding and construction of replacement dwelling located at Keelan Farm, Dyke Lane, Wadsworth. Thank you. Can we have the officer's presentation?
Thank you. If you just give me one moment, members, I just need to share my screen.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm sharing the right thing there. That's bear with me. Let me find the can members now see the first page of the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Right, sorry, I think I was sharing some local plan work. So apologies. Okay, so this is a planning application that has been brought before members at the request of the ward councillor. So there's no letters of objection received. The parish council opposes the application, and the key issues are set out on this first slide. So this shows the location of the application site, again in a what you might describe as a fairly remote rural location. So you can see the access via Popples Lane and the location of the application site. This is an aerial photo that possibly gives members a better impression of the surrounding terrain than the previous layout plan. So again, location plan, zooming in a little bit more, so members can see that there's a existing farmstead. And this relates to part of that property. This is the demolition plan. So you can see that there's an existing concrete building to be demolished and an existing wooden building to be demolished. These are, well, if I move on to the elevations, this is the wooden building. So you can see it's a kind of, I suppose you might call it an annex building at the moment, a timber sort of lodge type structure. And a structure that you might call a Nissan hut. So it's these two buildings that at the moment sit adjacent to one another on the application site. This shows the site layout as proposed. So it's proposed to replace the two aforementioned buildings with a new dwelling. This slide shows an existing public right-of-way route. It's probably a little bit faint, but you can just see within this green dotted line the existing public right-of-way, which what you can see obviously is that this application is not going to obstruct that route. So this is the main level plan showing the proposed residential accommodation, and the first level plan. So it's yes, it's a building with sort of one and two-story elements, with the living accommodation elevated to first floor, obviously to reflect the views in that location, and the roof plan. The elevations. So again, materials, mixture of Yorkshire stone, some use of timber, and stone roof tiles, and a section through the building. So again, some aerial photos, so you can see this is the position of the proposed new dwelling. There's an existing outbuilding you can see, and the existing residential buildings on site. So this is photos as existing. You've got an existing residential property, which is that building. So that building on the left-hand photo is this building on the right-hand photo. I referred to the access track and the existing agricultural building, and then you can see here the Nissan hut and the sort of timber lodge building. So the buildings that will be demolished and replaced are those that I'm identifying with the cursor. So these are photo montages. So essentially, the development as proposed has been superimposed onto the photos as existing. So it's a kind of mock-up of what you would see if planning permission was granted. So you can see the side elevation of the property and the gable elevation of the property. So final slide, so really sort of reiterates the first slide, but sets out the recommendation to refuse for the reasons set out in the report. Before I stop sharing, did any members want me to sort of go back to any slides or plans or anything? No, I can close the presentation down.
Yes, I think so. Okay, thank you. Members, questions for officers? Councillor Bellinger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions actually. One is, do we know how long the existing buildings have actually been in situ? Just so we can get a bit of an idea of, you know, if they've only been put up in the past few years or they've been there a considerable amount of time.
Yes. Shall I answer that one first?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
That's easier, because otherwise I'll forget your first question.
Right, okay.
No, in answer to Councillor Bellinger's question, the Nissan hut is clearly quite an old building, because you know, buildings like that generally aren't built these days, and it looks from the photos to be quite substantial. The timber building is more recent, but I can confirm that it's lawful. So all of there's no question that that the buildings that are there, what's the word, that they shouldn't be there. They are lawfully there, and as such, it's material for members to take into account their existing volume and visual impact. Both structures are certainly lawful, and hence the officer recommendation is couched in terms of the impact over and above what's lawful. It's recognised that the existing buildings are lawful.
Okay, and then my second point on that was regarding the public right of way that goes through the centre of that. Would there be a way of ensuring that there's a caveat in place to ensure that that public right of way is not blocked off at any point?
Yes, in response to that, and I may need to bring Mr. DeMock in to respond in further detail. But where there are public rights of way that are passing very close to development, so this isn't a case where you would need to reroute the public right of way as a result of the development. But if members were minded to permit, what we can do in these circumstances is put a planning condition on just requiring that the public right of way is maintained. What's the word? You might fence it off whilst you were doing construction work, such that walkers aren't sort of negotiating JCBs and pallets of materials and that kind of thing. But I might just ask if Mr. DeMock could comment further on that point.
Hello, yes, Richard. I've actually visited the site with the rights of way officer to clarify the existing and proposed alignment for the right of way. And as Richard said, it appears that the proposals would not interfere with that right of way. That the only slight concerns the rights of way officer had was that when you have them going through car parks and sort of outstandings like that, they can get blocked by parked vehicles. So, he did say whether we could maybe have some sort of condition for revised details, maybe, or fencing, something like that, just to show the route demarcated visually, on the ground.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn wanted to come in.
Thank you. Yes, I note on the bottom of page, I think it's page 54, that you've said that you think it's inappropriate development by virtue of the fact that there's an increase in height in the new building compared to what the two old buildings were height-wise, and also an increase in volume. And I just wondered if you could explain that a bit more, because on the face of it, the new building, and I think you do say it's kind of like, it's sort of on a sloping site and so on. So in that sense, like the main building and main farm building, it's kind of on a sloping, on a hillside. And it's going to be lower than the roof line of that is going to be lower than the existing farmhouse. And the volume, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of difference. So I'm just wondering if that's the main reason why we're being recommended to reject this application, which in other respects would appear to be relatively uncontroversial. I would just welcome some clarification on why it's inappropriate development purely and simply because of its increased height, when it's going to be lower than the building it's nearest to. Thank you.
Richard.
Yes, I think Councillor Lynn, you've sort of summarised the key considerations there. Clearly, from a planning policy point of view, what we are considering is whether it has a greater impact on the openness than the existing buildings there, which obviously are a fairly sort of the Nissan hut and the sort of the lodge building are in themselves quite sort of quite low buildings. I recognise what you say about the existing dwelling house. That's correct. But what we're comparing it with is the buildings that would be demolished rather than the dwelling house that would be retained. Now, obviously, that's the judgment of officers that the increase in height and the increase in volume is sufficient to contravene the policy. Now, obviously, it's sort of members' judgment in terms of whether they agree with that proposition or not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. This is a case where I think it's a shame that we didn't have the opportunity for site visit together, because I went and had a walk up there this morning. Lovely area. And you approach it from climbing up a track, which means that you don't get the full impression of the height of the structures. The current buildings that they're proposing to demolish are screened to a large extent by something that looks a bit like a bund, whereas what's being proposed, being higher, would extend above that, and that's almost certainly why they put the bedrooms on the ground floor and the lounge and dining room on the first floor, so that they can look over the screening to enjoy the sunsets from there. But the landscape of early 19th century farmhouses scattered amongst the meadows, the design of what's being put forward is very different. It's a much more modern design than what comprises the current landscape, and that's where I would have reservations.
Thank you. Any further questions for officers at this point? Thank you. Richard, want to come back in?
Yes, sorry, I just yes, Councillor Hutchinson's point just prompted me to just provide a point of sort of clarification that also links back to Councillor Lynn's point. So going back to paragraph 145 of the MPPF, a paragraph that's getting a fair sort of what's the word, a fair amount of airtime this afternoon in the context of the last application. But what we're looking at here is paragraph D, the replacement of a building provided the new building is in the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. So as a replacement, it's the test is of not being materially larger. That's the test, and I think it's always the thing with Greenbelt is going back and looking at para 145, because the tests under each sort of sub paragraph aren't all exactly the same. So we were talking in the context of the last application about having no greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt than the existing development. And then in the context of paragraph D, where you're talking about replacement dwellings, it's the test is not materially larger. So there are subtle differences, and the key issue here is about it not being materially larger.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baines.
Yeah, thank you. Just to Richard, really, this is the proposed new building is just over 4 meters higher than the existing building, and it's been already mentioned that this is possibly so that they have a better view from what's going to be the living quarters if this is accepted. But surely anybody's looking from any other area to it will notice the major impact this will have. You know, if they've got the view, it's going to spoil the view of people looking across to this building from other areas. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's picking up on the point that Councillor Hutchinson made, with obviously the benefit of having a look at the site, and clearly the advice of officers is that the replacement building is materially larger than what it replaces. But yes, I note your point, Councillor Baines.
Okay, any further questions for officers at this stage? I see no hands. Okay, in that case, we don't have any. Hang on.
We do have representation, Chair.
Sorry, we only have the agent, yes?
We have the agent and we have the applicant as well, Chair.
Okay, so are they splitting the time, or is one of them speaking? Do we know?
They haven't said. So would you like me to bring the agent on and she can speak first and then she can clarify for us?
Yeah, and if, yes, they'll have to split the 5 minutes.
I believe they're going to split it, but I'll just ask her to double check when she comes in.
Right, thank you very much.
Just 1 second. This is the agent, Sophie Marshall.
Thank you.
Hello, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we are splitting the time. I did send an email with the split on there.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Will the applicant is going to speak first, if that's okay?
Right, I'll bring Will in as well, that's fine.
Thank you.
Needs to unmute.
Hey everybody, can you hear me okay?
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Cracking. So when should we start? Should we start right away, or?
Yeah, if you're splitting it, what, 50-50 or something?
I've just got less than a minute to say, and then I'll hand over to Sophie.
Okay,
right.
and then the agent can have the rest. So
Absolutely.
whenever you're ready.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks for your time today. I hope you're all well in these strange times. My name is Will Vaughan, and I live at Keelam Cottage, Old Town Hebden Bridge, with my fiancée Charlotte and our 2 dogs, Blue and Finn. I grew up in Hebden Bridge, and like many others, I'm very fond of the area. Not only do we live at Keelam Cottage, we also run a successful e-commerce business from here, and we currently employ 15 local people from the surrounding area. Myself and Charlotte live at Keelam Cottage as subject of today's review. Keelam Cottage is a substandard wooden chalet that we built ourselves. It's in a poor condition and is currently falling apart. We have leaks in the roof, and it's not fit for purpose. We're now in the position where we'd like to replace this wooden chalet with a suitable home that is fit for purpose and hopefully one that doesn't leak. We would like to make our new home as sustainable and suitable for the area as possible, and have designed it with exactly that in mind. It'd be great to have a place we can finally call home and hopefully start a family. I'll hand over to our planning agent, Sophie, for further details.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Will. Good afternoon, all. I'm the planning consultant. I'm a chartered town planner as well. I'm here to talk about the assessment against the adopted development plan. So the officer's report agrees the proposal will not have an unacceptable impact on trees, landscaping, ecology, ground conditions, flooding, drainage, highways, public footpath, layout, design, materials, residential amenity, or the special landscape areas. The proposal is a replacement dwelling, as there is an existing dwelling, not an annex building, that has been used for 6 years. And it's infilling of a previously developed site, falling under 2 exemptions to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Compliance with either one is sufficient to render the principle acceptable. I will explain how it complies with both. There is no need to prove very special circumstances in this case. Both officer and agent agree on the assessment for replacement buildings. It must be in the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. The use is agreed, however, materially larger is not defined in policy. Reference is taken from court cases, appeal decisions, and the council's previous decisions. Due to a requirement for consistency in decision making, Calderdale approved a replacement dwelling in the Greenbelt under application 18-00968 full. The officer's report states Calderdale generally considers that an increase in volume of up to 50% may be appropriate. The proposal in front of you only increases the volume by 50% and reduces the footprint by 11%. Although the height is increased, it will sit less than 1.4 metres lower than the farmhouse in a subservient position as it is being dug into the ground. A further submitted appeal case 31776670 supports this view. The officer's report also states a reason for refusal is the volume will be significantly larger than the existing dwelling, when this is not the case as previously stated by the council. The second exemption is infilling of a previously developed site, which is very different to the limited infilling within villages exemption. With respect, I think the officer's report uses the wrong assessment of infilling, as they state it is too remote to be considered infill. We are not suggesting the site is limited infilling within a village, as this is clearly not the case. However, the site is previously developed as there are dwellings and non-agricultural buildings with curtilages. The proposal is infilling of this previously developed site as it is positioned between buildings in a built-up site. Therefore, the new development must not have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. The assessment of openness relating to these infill sites has been extensively examined in the 2018 Eurogarages High Court case. In that case, the development was more than double what the Cheshire Council considered to be acceptable volume in the Greenbelt. However, the court said it is not the volume to be assessed, but the scale of the development, its locational context and its spatial or visual implications, meaning you
1 minute remaining.
Meaning you must take a step back from the site and consider impacts on the wider Greenbelt, not the specific site. This proposal sits comfortably within the council's generally accepted volume increases and does not increase on the openness of the wider Greenbelt due to the visual backdrop of the moor, the existing farmhouse and the surrounding buildings as seen in the 3D images. Further advantages include the replacement of a more energy efficient, sustainable dwelling with the use of materials that are more in keeping with the area, subject to condition. It will also provide local need housing for a local family employing local people and creation of additional habitats with new plantings. In addition, the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply and this will contribute to a livable house. Accordingly, it's contended that for the reasons stated above and in supporting submissions, the proposal fully complies with the development plan and we respectfully request you vote to approve today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Members, questions for the agents? Thank you, Councillor Bellinger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to clarify on a couple of things. Are we actually replacing the chalet or the Nissan hut here? Because you were saying that you're actually in the chalet at the moment, and I thought it was actually the Nissan hut that's going to be built on. Am I wrong, or what is it that's going to be developed?
Yeah, so sorry.
I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so it is both of the existing buildings that will be replaced. So the Nissan hut is in residential use as well. So it's both the buildings that will be replaced with this single dwelling.
Right.
Yeah.
How far is the farmhouse from this new development? And did you say that this new development is going to be 1.4 metres less than the height of the farmhouse, the existing farmhouse?
Yes, it will be 1.4 metres below. It just sits, I don't know whether you can bring the plan up again, but it sits
difficult.
Very, I've not got a measurement to hand. Maybe Will, could you answer that? Do you know how?
I don't have the exact measurements to hand, but so what you've basically, you've got Keelan Farm, which is sits, I think it was 9.7 metres, and the Keelan Cottage is like substantially lower. And then you've got another building to the side, which is about the same height. So we sort of, designed it with that in mind to be much lower than the main farmhouse that's been there.
I'm just trying to picture. Right. Okay. So you're currently at the moment, are you actually living in that Nissan hut?
So the wooden chalet, I don't, you see if, yeah, where the cursor is, that's what we're basically living in at the moment.
That's what you're living in at the moment. So that's
yeah.
So that's the Nissan hut, is it then? And then what's
that's the wooden chalet. Just slightly above that, you've got the Nissan hut. You can just see that. So basically, like demolishing those two buildings and replacing, with a more fit for purpose home sort of thing.
Right. Okay. And what's this building lower down at the bottom of that picture? That one there, yeah.
That's just storage for the farm.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. That's great. Is that's cleared the whole picture up for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions for the agent at this point? Can't see any hands. Any hands going up? No. Okay. In that case, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The agent and the developer. Right. Thank you. Okay, members. Any questions, comments, points of view? Councillor Baines, and then Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Baines.
I agree with the officers on this particular application. It's over 4 metres higher, over twice as high as the current building. And I just think that the officers have got this right, and I would move that we adopt officers' recommendation.
Councillor Hutchinson.
I'll second that. As I say, the views that we've been shown in the presentation show what it would be like if you were sitting on a drone. They don't show what it would be like if you were actually at ground level. And I feel the impact from the increased height would be substantial.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or any amendments? Thank you, Councillor Lynn, and then Councillor Bellinger.
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment to move that we should in fact reject the officer application and approve the application. In my view, although I appreciate the points made by both Councillor Baines and Councillor Hutchinson about the increased height, nonetheless, I feel that on balance, to replace two existing buildings, single-storey buildings, with one building which would be, much more suitable for its use and so on, in what is actually quite an isolated area. So it's not as though it's going to be impacting adversely on surrounding properties and so on. I feel that we would be justified in permitting it, and so I'd like to move that as an amendment, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a proposal and a seconder. We have an amendment. And Councillor Bellinger.
Yeah, I'll actually second Councillor Lynn's proposal to go against officers' recommendations to refuse. And I agree that it's going to be removing two old buildings that are probably past the date for something new and more substantial for a family, and it is actually lower than the farm property which is actually next to it.
Okay, thank you. At this point, sorry, Richard wants to come in, then Councillor Hutchinson.
Yes, just a point of clarification on the amendment so that I understand it correctly. Am I correct in understanding that it's predicated on the proposition of the development not having a greater impact on the openness of the greenbelt than the existing development? So it's the exception under subparagraph G of paragraph 145, limited infilling or partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land, whether redundant or in continuing use, which would not have a greater impact on the openness of the greenbelt than existing development. Is that that's Councillor Lynn's and Councillor Bellinger's proposition?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood the
grounds.
The grounds.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Before we move to anything else, Councillor Hutchinson wanted to speak again.
I'd just like to make a comment that just because one might accept that the buildings that would be replaced are substandard, not energy efficient or any, and a bit of an eyesore, doesn't necessarily stop you from having a view on what is proposed to replace them.
No, of course not. Any further points? In that case, we would move to vote on the amendment to go against officers' recommendations and approve the planning application. All those in favour, please show hands. That's 3, is that correct? All those opposed? That's 3. In that case, I vote in favour of the amendment. Use chairs. Oh, actually, I don't need to use casting votes, using chairs vote. So that's in favour of the planning application.
So you're
Thank
voting
you.
to, sorry, Chair, just to clarify, you're voting to permit the application?
Yes.
And can I also clarify that you're delegating to, so just so I understand, so Chair's voting to permit the application. So
Yes.
That's, as I clarified a minute ago, on the basis that there would not, that it would not have a greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the existing use, and officers would be delegated to draft appropriate planning conditions.
Yes.
Would those conditions refer to the condition that was discussed? I can't remember which member raised it, around the right of way. One of the members raised a condition about the rights of way.
Yeah,
there was, and yeah, as Andrew said, there are issues around that, both in terms of when the development happens, if it happens, but also that there might be issues around the location. But yes, it's up to we delegate that, I think, to officers to deal with. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm clear. Can I just check with the legal officer that that she's clear on where we are? Yes, I think that's a nod. Is it, Caffrey? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to take a 5-minute comfort break. Can I say that literally 5 minutes, please?
Chair, sorry, we've not.
I don't know how we do this.
We've not finished the vote yet, Chair. We've only voted on.
Oh, sorry.
We need to vote on what is now the substantive motion.
Yes, of course we do. The amendment now becomes the substantive motion. Can I have a vote, please? All those in favour of the new substantive motion to permit with officers' recommendations, sorry, conditions. Thank you. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Hang on, I'm counting. How many have you counted? Can we do that again? It's trying to change screen to count.
Yeah, can we just have, if you just keep them holding up until sort of Sue and I just sort of say, yes, we've got everybody, then that might make
okay.
So yeah.
All those in favour of the new substantive motion, please show your hands.
Or including the chair.
Thank you.
No, I've got.
Is that what you've got, Caffrey?
I've got 5 because I can see that Councillor Clark was indicating as well.
So yeah, I've got Councillor Clark, Councillor Lynn, Councillor Bellinger and the chair. I've got 4.
Councillor Lynn, Councillor Bellinger,
Councillor Clark and the chair.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
I have the same problem. As I sweep to catch the others,
Yes.
Councillor Bellinger seems to get 2 votes because he's on both screens.
Yes, that's where that's where I've gone wrong, yep.
Okay, so all those against the new substantive motion?
3.
Okay.
3. Okay. And that means there are no abstentions.
No.
Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I said 5-minute break I don't know what the easiest thing to do. Is it easiest just to turn your sound and your camera off for 5 minutes? Is that the way we could do it? Susan, do you think? You're on mute, Susan.
I'll keep mine on.
And we can just turn our screens off, can we?
Yeah, but I'll go away, but I'll keep my camera on so I can see people coming back.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Susan, are we still waiting for people?
Yes, Chair, it looks like Councillor Clark is not back with us yet.
That's better than I can hear you then. Okay, we seem to be all back.
Yes, we're all back.
Okay, in that case, move on to the next planning application, which is 20/00217, which is the proposed development of the A629 Phase 2 in Halifax Town Centre. Are you doing the presentation, Anita, or is Richard?
Oh, I'm doing the presentation. Hopefully it will open up on the screen. So I'll share the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Can you see it there, Councillor?
Not yet, no.
Is it coming up?
No.
Right, I'll try again.
Okay.
Sorry, I have just completely lost it. Just bear with me, please.
I'm opening the presentation on my screen, so if need be,
could you share it?
Can you share it, please?
I can once it's fully opened. It will just take a minute to download because I'm surmising it's probably quite a large presentation.
It is. I did have it there and it disappeared on me. Had it all ready to go as well.
It's just downloading at the moment.
Would you like me to start and catch up with the presentation?
I think if you could, Anita, start on the sort of policy aspects and the background.
Yes, because I think a lot of it councillors will already be quite familiar with. So this application is a resubmission following a redesign of the scheme resulting in the state decision to list the Hill Corporation, which is also known as 31 Square Road. It's now been listed as a Grade 2 building. Applications is being referred to committee for determination because of its sensitivity. 2 representations including one from the Halifax Civic Trust, have been received. The proposed development includes approximately 14 hectares of land divided into 3 main phases: eastern, central and western corridors around Halifax town centre, and will involve a number of functions to connectivity, pedestrian and cycle and public transport facilities. Excuse me. And it will include junction remodelling, road widening and cycle lanes in a number of locations, and the new revised bus box, which allows the buses to go around the town centre. The main changes from the previous scheme are the retention of the Hughes Corporation, the modification of the cycle and pedestrian facilities on Commercial Street and Ward's End, which some councillors will remember that was commented on in the last application, and also retention of 22 parking spaces at All Green. Again, I think that was an issue that was raised with the previous application. Improved accessibility measures on Market Street and modifications to cycle facilities along Winding Road. This development is an EIA development, and the application is accompanied by an environmental statement. A summary of the conclusions are set out in the report on pages 65 to 70. The proposed development is considered sustainable and acceptable in principle, as it would meet the objectives of paragraph 8 of the NPPF, helping to build a strong, responsive and competitive economy, improving traffic conditions and unlocking investment, and improving health outcomes. What I had proposed to show you was the 2 main changes over and above the regional application. First being the Eastern Gateway, which was previously referred to as the Peace Gardens, but it's now been referred to as the Eastern Gateway. This involves interventions including a new public space immediately adjacent to the Calderdale Industrial Museum, the Square Chapel, Central Library and the Hughes Corporation. It will see the closure of Square Road in this location and see the realignment of the Eastern Corridor along the former Church Street. And Church Street runs, if you're facing up the road towards Spencer's car park, the Church Street is the opposite side of the Hughes Corporation, which is currently blocked off and for pedestrian access, and runs adjacent to the railway station and the car park below, which is Eureka's. The works also include implementation of a new junction between Alfred Street East and Church Street, traffic islands and controlled and uncontrolled crossings. Richard, can you share that presentation?
I think I can now.
That might be a good point, because I think we could do with the diagrams.
Yeah, it's loading. Thank you.
So if you could slip through to, I think it's slide 4. So this is the whole site. As you see, it covers most of the town centre. Keep going. So this is the present situation. Top one facing just about where the crossing is from the railway station up, and you've got the Hughes Corporation on your right hand side there. And then the bottom one's looking down. The junction is with Alfred Street East, which is on your left hand side there. And beyond that, the Hughes Corporation on the left, down towards the Horton Street station. Yeah, if you could go to the next one, please, Richard. So here you've got the top half of the site, but which just shows you the main Eastern Gateway public open space, which will be created, and the junction with Alfred Street East, which will take cars to be able to access Marks and Spencer's car park, but there will be a bus box further up that road. So cars coming out of Marks and Spencer's will have to come back down and use Alfred Street East, and then along Church Street, which is on the east, which will be the eastern flow of the new corridor. English Heritage have been consulted and strongly welcome the amended proposals, which they consider offer the opportunity to enhance the setting of the list of buildings by removing traffic on Square Road, creating public realm from which people can appreciate the surrounding built and natural landscape. So Richard, if you could move to the next one, please. And as you see here, this is the bottom half of the site. You've got station approach to on your right-hand side and over the road to Horton Street. And you'll see there that the access up into Square Road will be access only for deliveries and disabled access into Square Chapel. And that will be bollard controlled. And now the main road will go to the opposite side of the Hughes Corporation. That's it. So it will be to the right of the Hughes Corporation, to the left of the Eureka car park, which is below there. This has been designed to facilitate the proposed station gateway improvements, which are yet to come forward to planning. So that has been taken into account, so it's future-proofed. Take me on to the next slide, please. So this is to give you some images of what it would look like. On the top one there, you'll see you're looking towards the top end of the street. You've got the Hughes Corporation on your right and the Industrial Museum on the left there. And at the bottom there, you'll find is the top portion of the site. There is a considerable change in levels, hence the platform there and improvements. And along Alfred Street East will also be new bus parking bays as well. The Council's Conservation Officer raises no objections, subject to some clarifications on design elements and further details required by which will be required by condition. These are set out as conditions 3, 5 and 6 in the report. They believe that the proposals build on the special character of Halifax Conservation Area and provide public benefits to improve the economic, social and environmental regeneration of the borough. I mentioned in the previous slides that there would be restrictions on the access to what will become the Eastern Gateway public open space for loading and unloading and servicing of those buildings. Highways raise no objections, subject to a service management plan to cover those arrangements, and that is set out in condition 7 of the report. They've also confirmed that the bus routing revisions and stop locations have been developed following discussions with the combined authority, bus operators and transport officers. Junction and carriageway improvements have been developed in consultation with officers and are acceptable in terms of safety. And they've also looked in detail at the new on-road, off-road cycle facilities. So just give you a couple more impressions of the landscaping that will be introduced in this area. And overall, I think the feeling is this is a vast improvement to the previous proposals for this gateway. Leading on, thank you, Richard, he's jumped ahead of me, to Ball Green. Thank you. This is the second major change to the original proposals. The interventions at Ball Green include the replacement of the existing roundabout with traffic signals to increase capacity. The proposed works enable improved pedestrian crossing facilities at grade and increased pavement widths. And following consultations, it has been able, the proposal has maintained 18 general car parking spaces and 2 disabled and 2 electric vehicle parking spaces at Ball Green. So the image is there, what is there now. And if you go to the next one, please. So this gives you an overview of what is proposed, the parking landscaping, and you can see there the revised pedestrian facilities and crossing. It's a very busy junction both for vehicles and for pedestrians, and this will improve crossings. And further along to the north, the pedestrian underpasses will be filled in and taken out. That was in the previous application. So move to the next one. It gives you an image of what Bull Green will look like once redevelopment's taken place. The applicant has sought to integrate opportunities for biodiversity net gain in the whole of the proposals, and we managed. It's been managed to squeeze into the town centre scheme 84 new street trees, an amount of ornamental planting, new hedgerows, and species-rich grassland, as well as bat roosting, artificial bat roosts. And these are subject to the recommended conditions 15 to 18 in the report. Therefore, the development is considered to accord with the NPPF and policies NE 15, 16 and 17. If you can go on to the next one, which is the last screen. Environmental health have been consulted and raised no objections. They have recommended condition 19 to control emissions during construction, which will be phased through the town centre, and also condition 4 in respect of lighting. It is, however, noted that the redistribution of traffic more evenly between east and west routes and the change at Bull Green will have potential to increase carbon monoxide emissions. However, it is noted that if we did nothing with the increase in traffic, this is likely to occur also. There will be improvements on the number of properties who will see reduction in carbon monoxide and reduction in noise, particularly residential properties at the top end of the town centre. Also, with the improvements in the public realm and green infrastructure, this had potential to improve use of people walking and cycling and provide wider public health benefits. However, as we say, there will be some residential properties which will see a negative impact at the start, at the implementation of the scheme, but these are likely to reduce over time as different legislative requirements come in for reducing use of petrol cars, for example. It's therefore considered that the public benefits of the development outweigh the adverse impacts on sensory receptors, and therefore the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Can you take the presentation down? Okay, that's great. Right, members, questions for officers? Councillor Hutchinson. And then Councillor Bellinger.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions really. Market Street. Well, as a cyclist myself, I very much welcome the increased permeability for cyclists into the town centre and through the town centre. But in areas where cyclists share the same road space with pedestrians, there are opportunities for conflict, particularly with pedestrians who are blind or deaf, who can't hear a cycle approaching. Looking at the scheme on Market Street, it looks as if there is a marked cycleway at the south end and then in the Northgate bit, but it kind of peters out in the middle. What's been the planner's thoughts on how you make sure that you reduce conflict between cyclists and pedestrians?
I think that has been considered in the scheme, and it's a difficult one. I appreciate that if someone is visually impaired, where you will have tactile paving showing where the cycle lanes and pedestrian crossing points are, and that there is some sharing of space and responsibilities on the cyclists to ensure that they ride safely. I think Andrew Demock is available and has some insights from the cycle community about their approach here, but it hasn't been raised. It has been safety audited, and they feel that it is a safe proposal.
And the other question was, as you've mentioned, nitrogen oxide levels are likely to go up as a result of this scheme. I'm slightly concerned that we're only planning to put 2 charging points for electric vehicles in the Ball Green car park, and you haven't said whether they're fast chargers or rapid chargers. I would have thought in that position rapid chargers would be appropriate, but having only 2 for a 22 space car park seems very unambitious. Where new car parks are being designed in other parts of the country, they're stipulating that most of the parking spaces ought to have charging points.
I appreciate, Councillor, where you're coming from on that. It is in accordance with current guidelines under the Unitary Plan and the Combined Authority. Obviously, once we have the facilities to actually get charging points, they can be multiplied because of the infrastructure will be there ready as demand increases. And this is the only place in the scheme where we're creating car parking spaces. So it's only at the moment where electric charging points are being proposed. And there are proposals elsewhere in the town centre for charging points. So no raised by highways as to the amount on there.
I mean, it is the minimal requirement, and that is, you know, it is just minimal. And when
sorry, can we re-ask the question, Colin, when they got the applicant on? Because I think it's an important point rather than for the planning officers. And I'd like to bring Andrew in about your earlier point about cycling and the cycling lanes, if that's possible. Can we have the highways officer? Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. The cycling officer, the council and the transportation team were involved with the discussions with the applicant, and we've had input from cycling groups, and it was safety audited as well. I mean, it's always difficult in these kind of areas where you've got different users, but looking at experience elsewhere in other towns, you know, it generally does work when you create the low speed environment that's been proposed here with the, you probably can't see that well on the drawings, but there'll be raised tables with contrasting surface and materials, and narrowed overall widths compared to the existing use for the on-street parking. So it would be generally a low speed environment. You'll see that generally majority of cyclists do adapt their behaviour, so there'll be no concerns raised in the initial audits, and there will be a more a detailed safety audit. There are sort of 4 stages as you move along the design process, so there will be additional safety auditing as the scheme progresses at detailed design.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn, wish to come in?
No, I think I'll leave my question until the applicant comes in, because it concerns the Western Gateway and the whole approach to that. So I think I'd rather address my questions to the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you wanted to comment?
Yes, just a point around the sharing of space. I don't know if any members saw, I think it was on, I can't remember which news it was on, whether it was on the BBC News or the Channel 4 News last night, but they reported from a borough in London and an area which I think was locally nicknamed Little Amsterdam. and that had shared spaces for both cyclists and pedestrians. But because of the way it was designed, with the likes of the raised platforms that Mr. Demox referred to, it was designed in a way that encouraged sensible cycling rather than rather than people sort of speeding on bikes, which you do sometimes see now on pavements. So I think we can have comfort that there are precedents for this working, and that the safety audit process will ensure that as the scheme develops, will ensure that the sort of the levels and the sort of detailed design and the like will reduce speeds and ensure that there's a safe interface of cyclists and pedestrians.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for officers at this stage? Yeah, Councillor Bellinger and then Councillor Hutchinson again. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I missed you, Paul.
It's good to see that there's been some substantial changes made to these plans now, because I think my concerns originally was taking away the vehicular access to the Woolshop shopping centre, or at least making it hard for for people to get to there. Is it possible we can actually go back to the first screen so I can get some clarification on how that change has now been made? Because I saw on the drawings that it said bus access or bus lane only. I just want to make sure that that is actually vehicular access. If I can bring that up. Right, and we'll back. And again.
If you just tell me when to stop, Councillor Bellinger.
That's the one. On the original plans, that road wasn't actually in, was it? The Alfred Street East, and it was a case of all traffic was taken down and around the bottom, past the church. So I take it this road is now for vehicular access to the Woolshops, because I know on that road it says except buses.
You can get into the Woolshops here on this access here.
On the Alfred Street East.
Yeah. And then, but the bit that runs below, sort of, I describe it. The bit that runs parallel to the car park is bus only, but you can still get either side into the Woolshops. So the bus, there is a section which is still bus only, but there's still access to the Woolshops to get in from the north and from the south.
Right, because I don't quite understand that road layout, because if you're coming back, you've got to give way there on your left hand side.
It's one way.
It's what? It's one way.
Sorry.
It can't be one way.
I didn't realise I was saying that out loud.
Yeah. You've got a left turn there off Church Street along Alfred Street, and then it goes into except buses.
So you've got a going up.
So where's the vehicular access for anything else?
I think what the annotation on the plan says that unless you're a bus, you've got to go left into Woolshops, and that it's only that buses are the only ones that can carry on round what's effectively the sort of the ring road.
Right.
So it's
the buses is straight on.
Yeah, buses can go straight on, but if you're a car, you have to turn left into Woolshops. I mean, that will be a point which the applicants will be able to clarify, but I think Ms Seymour has the same interpretation.
Yes, that's it. So basically, buses will go straight on.
Right.
And vehicles can turn into the wall shops and
Right.
come out and come down Alfred Street as well.
Right. So when vehicles come out of the wall shops, it's going to be a right turn only.
Yes.
There. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically that bit between the north and the south entrances will be bus only.
Okay. And is it Winding Road? No, what's the other one? Is it the one where the Vets is at the moment?
King Street.
King Street, that's it. Will that still be as it is at the moment then, a two-way system and around?
Vets, so do you mean the RSPCA?
No,
it's Hurd and Co, I think.
Yeah. Where the Cenotaph is, King Street.
That's still two-way.
That's still going to be two-way.
You can still get round.
Right. Right. No, that's fine. Just wanted some clarification on those points, that's all. And I think it's far better than the original plan.
Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. Right. Thank you. Further questions for officers, members? I know, Colin, Councillor Hutchinson.
I was just going to ask whether in the design, the more detailed design phases that are coming, that consultation be had with people with sensory impairments, blindness, deafness, about some of the proposals for design of the shared use. Because when people talk about liaising with the disability groups, they tend to think of people in wheelchairs rather than necessarily thinking of people with sensory impairment. And that's much more important in this stage.
I think Andrew Rock might be able to help on that, because they obviously have a consultation in highways.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there wasn't a consultation undertaken for this scheme, and there will be in the detailed design. I mean, it's important to recognise that there will actually be, as part of the design, visual markers and slightly raised edgings on the curb. You often see it's like a corduroy type paving, it's called, where you'll get similar to what you have at the start of, say, top of the steps up at the library, and the pedestrian crossings. So it gives both a visual and a tactile underfoot warning. And what the design has on the Market Street, where other areas where we'll have an area, there'll be sort of defensible areas at the edges where visually impaired pedestrians can actually sense that, you know, if they don't feel comfortable going into the areas where cyclists and say occasional vehicles and deliveries occur, they can stay out to the sides. So it's come out of government concerns by the disability groups, and it's been incorporated into design guidance for highway engineers. So that'll be fully taken into account as the scheme progresses.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. We don't have any objectors or councillors. So can we go to the applicant, please? Sorry, is Sue still there?
I'm just doing it now, Chair. They should be
Okay.
joining you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Are you leading on the presentation? Or...
Good afternoon, Chair, councillors.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I was also bringing Simon Liversidge in, but he doesn't seem to have made it through. I'll keep trying.
While Sue's trying to bring Simon in, can I just clarify, Richard? Got down that you've got some agents as well. Are you sharing your time? How are you? How's this going to work?
My intention was to take advantage of the 5 minutes presentation and it would be in the Q&A session whereby I will bring in my project manager and consultant support if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Simon. Are we waiting for anyone else at this point?
I only had 2 names registered for applicant at this time, Chair, but we do have 2 representatives from the agents as well.
Okay. Is it useful, Richard, for them all to be on as well?
Not necessarily at this stage, I wouldn't have said no, only in the Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much then. In that case, who's starting? Are you starting the presentation? Richard, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, go ahead.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Chair, councillors, members of the panel. My name is Richard Binks and I am the Programme Manager for the West Yorkshire Public Transport Fund within Calderdale, and I am the applicant in this case. As you're aware, I'm supported by Simon Liversidge, the Project Manager, and AECOM, our agents on this applicant, who are also in attendance to answer the Q&A session afterwards. So this proposal, which we are proud to present to you, is the accumulation of an extensive and meticulous development in order to provide the transitional change of Halifax Town Centre's highway network, public transport vision, active travel opportunity, the public realm, and addressing pedestrian plus business severance within the core and outlying areas of town. These packages of measures funded by the West Yorkshire Combined Authority to the value of over £50 million via a central government growth deal fundamentally avail new economic and environmental opportunities in Halifax, providing tangible support to Calderdale's strategic ambition of being the best borough in the north. In context, the A629 Halifax to Huddersfield Corridor Improvement Package comprises of a series of multimodal upgrades prioritised for delivery under the West Yorkshire Public Transport Fund, of which Phase 2 is a part of, and aiming to address the residual accessibility constraints that are undermining the economic growth in the area. Phase 1 focuses upon a journey time interventions, modal choice and improved reliability from regional national markets. Having reached Halifax's destination via the earlier interventions, Phase 2 seeks to augment the offer upon arrival and ensure infrastructure is benchmarked plus future-proof to capture conditions upon which the town can thrive, including a new bus and rail station, which will be follow-up applications, I think has been noted already. This bold vision includes upgrading all 14 junctions surrounding the town centre. Currently 60% of vehicles route via Cow Green to the west versus a Phase 2 circular outcome of the distribution and equal 50 split around the east and the west. This contributes to site unlocking in the east, as this route, which includes Church Street, Bank Bottom, Barry Lane, remodelling with heavy engineering measures, enhances accessibility to emerging development land at Bailey Hall and Cripplegate, for instance. The town's environmental core is enhanced by prioritising pedestrian amenity first. Again, for instance, Market Street is closed, which becomes a high quality public realm mirroring Southgate on the opposite side of the market. Accessibility is built into the proposals throughout with enhanced surface level crossings, particularly at Bull Green, which is placed as a roundabout with the signals and super crossings. There's a redundancy to the subways at Pelham Lane. Also enhanced is the linear route to Dean Clough, encouraging connectivity to this key employment site. Cycle infrastructure has been touched on during the members' discussion. And of course, this is a significantly enhanced throughout the town, with a particular consideration at junctions and cycle parking hubs. I've also noticed the routes extend to dependent district centre connections delivered via different phases. And we would like to thank the cycle stakeholder groups who have taken a keen role in developing the suitability of designs. So public realm, 3 areas of new public realm at gateways into Halifax are formed, one in the east surrounding the Hughes building, which is now retained and incorporated into new redesigned landscape, the images of which you saw previously since the last application. This is complementary to the railway station gateway project, which I say is forthcoming, and its placemaking opportunity. The design cleverly introduces a new transport interchange between buses and rail, and the opens Beckett Street, which is historically to the east of the Hughes building. Bull Green, Wards End, plus Commercial Street and Northgate are all enhanced with new geometry and high quality expanded paving works. Under the partnership,
1 minute remaining.
George Square and alleyways are also enhanced. Again, key stakeholders, including accessibility groups, have been involved in this. The bus box is rationalised throughout town, and working with the operators via an anti-clockwise bus box, we've removed the use of Market Street while allowing town centre permeation. On-street parking loss is 9%, but we feel that's palatable. Land assembly is to the fore, and if we have a successful outcome to today, we will be launching a CPO to acquire the remaining land. This application has been accompanied by an environmental impact assessment, a business case, and should again we be successful, we'll be submitting the FBC to the Combined Authority in July. In summary, I really hope this unprecedented opportunity before us to realistically deliver a modern day legacy project which befits our proud town will be positively embraced. My team and myself will be happy to take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions, Councillor Lynn?
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. As Richard probably knows, I represent Park Ward, which lies immediately to the west of the town centre. And I don't appreciate the difficulties that the team must have had in trying to reconfigure the plans following the decision to list the Hughes Corporation building. But I have to say that, and I would like some sort of clarification on exactly what is going to be happening between Cow Green and Bull Green. My understanding, having participated in various consultation meetings and all the rest of it with people, was that actually the opportunity to connect my ward directly into the town centre, when it is actually, it has up to now been very much kind of ghettoised to the west of the town centre, was actually going to be taken as a result of this scheme. And I do appreciate that that the decision to do away with the absolutely ghastly underpass at the bottom of Pelham Lane is excellent. But as far as I understand it, there's been no work done to address the possibility of continuing access down Gibbet Street, pedestrian access down Gibbet Street. I'm also concerned that it would appear that there's been an acceptance that there's going to be a great deal more traffic going round that western side as a result of it, when what we had been hoping for, particularly given the drift downhill, if you like, in terms of economic and commercial activity in the town, was that actually the opportunities might have been taken to eliminate the dual carriageway section between Bull Green and Cow Green, and to really improve the urban realm there. So I'd like some reassurance. I understand in a way, and I'm admitting to special pleading on behalf of my own ward, but I would like some reassurance that actually that the hopes that we had for the western side of this haven't had to be sacrificed because of the need to resolve the Hughes Corporation problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Richard?
That we've given equal priority to both the east and west of the town. I know Councillor Lynn, we've spoken about connectivity to the Gibbet Street area, and we have looked at that opportunity coming forward with new walking routes, for instance. That's something I think we'll take up within the detailed design and progress that through to the new junction implications at Pelham Lane, for instance, with the new surface level crossings. Again, we're trying to address severance, to the ward on the west of town. Again, that comes via the intervention at Bull Green as well. I take your point in terms of trying to manage the traffic. I think obviously we're trying to promote a more equal split around the east and the west of the town. I think in terms of the corridor, it is a longer route. The west is still the shortest route around town, but not to say that we're not trying to encourage that modal switch, onto the long, arguably corridor, because it's less constrained. So I think going forward, I think we're not looking at planning to downgrade the dual carriageway to single on Cow Green, for instance. That's still very much as is. However, we do feel that the split in traffic will gradually equal itself around town, which will benefit the western side.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Hutchinson? Councillor Hutchinson.
I mean, similarly, given that there's likely to be a large redevelopment of the Birch Hill area, again, or is it Birch Street, that's going to be still very much cut off from the town centre for pedestrian or cycle access. And, you know, looking at what's being planned for Orange Street, it doesn't seem to actually many opportunities there. But my other question was about electric vehicle charging points at the Bull Green car park. That putting 2 electric vehicle charging points there seems decidedly unambitious, particularly when we're admitting that there's going to be an increase in nitrogen oxide, or likely to be an increase in nitrogen oxide pollution within the town centre. We shouldn't be putting barriers in the way of people to switch to electric vehicles. So if, at the very least, can the ducting be put in place and the spacing be put in place to accommodate electric vehicles in the not too distant future?
I do fully agree with that point. I do think too, possibly with hindsight, isn't sufficient. And I think because we're on the cusp of understanding the future aspect of EVs and the infrastructure required to it, then ducting, absolutely, I think we can certainly consider that. I think in terms of opting for a particular mode of the charging, for instance, that's a difficult one at this moment in time. I think in one respect, prior to the application going in, we were seeking to put EV charging points in the big car park on Halifax Station Gateway. However, we've had a change of direction on that one. So I think that leads more towards implementing more in the town's core again. So I think one action is preempted the other one. So I totally agree, and I take the point that we do definitely need to consider more EV charging points. This is the opportunity, particularly on street as well as the car parks.
Thank you. Other members? Thank you. Councillor Baines.
Thank you. Has there been any consultation with the business community and in particular the retail businesses? And what effect is this likely to have in employment within the town centre area?
Yes, there has. We've been obviously speaking to the business community. Harvest, for instance, were one of the key stakeholders where we amended the parking opportunity, for instance, in Cow Green and Bull Green area. The original application fully pedestrian around that car park, but we've retained spaces there, you know, following that consensus of view from the business community, and that we do need to retain a degree of parking to that western side of town. So yes, we certainly are. In terms of the employment opportunity.
Any further questions? It's been pointed out to me that the environmental health officers are in Princess Buildings, which closes in 15 minutes. So have we got any questions for environmental health before we either lock them in or lock them out of their office? No, can't see any. Okay, thank you very much. Other questions for the applicants? I can't see any hands going up. Okay, thank you very much. I've gone to members' comments, proposals. Thank you. Nobody's hands going up. Thank you, Paul. Sorry, Councillor Bellinger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's all right. Yeah, I'm happy to see the new changes with this proposal. And with that, I'm happy to go with the recommendations to permit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curtin and Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that as well, and I'm pleased that now we've got the used corporation building saved, so I'm quite happy to go along with that. And the plans that we've seen this afternoon do see improvement on what we're.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Curtin. Councillor Hutchinson?
No, I was just going to second if no one else was.
Right, thank you. Any amendments? No, no amendments. In that case, can we go to the vote? All those in favour of officers' recommendations? Thank you. Have we got those, Susan? 5. Okay. Thank you. All those against? That's 1. And abstentions? Okay. Thank you. In that case, the application is passed with following officers' recommendations. It's approved. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for what's been a fairly long afternoon with the occasional technical hitches. I'm sure we'll get better at this, and I'll remember to turn my microphone on and off now and again.
Entertaining with the dogs and the ice cream vans as well.
Yeah, I thought Colin should go out and buy us all ice cream. I assumed it was outside your house.
No, they've gone now.
Oh, have they? Oh, that's a shame.
So's the sunshine.
Stephen, yeah. Councillor Baines, sorry.
I'd just like to some of the presentations from the planning officers, they were a bit too small to see, especially the first one. You know, I had to really get close up to my screen to sort of make out the detail of it. So if we could look at that in the future, so it could be more full screen rather than just a quarter screen, which I think the first one was, and the you know, the others weren't that great. You know, they were better, much better. They were about half the size of the screen, but you know, it really we ought to look for a bigger screen presentation on those, because that's where the details are. Thank you.
Yeah, I find that difficult. I have to keep doing, you know, expanding and looking at bits of it. And it was an issue with the first one, which I think is to do with the size of the files and not downloading properly. Sorry, Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a question, actually. As a result of kicking off the planning meetings again now by Zoom, does this mean that the powers that officers had on the delegated powers will not continue?
Richard?
Yes, I mean, as discussed at that scrutiny panel a few weeks ago, I think just a couple of months ago, the notion of a virtual planning committee was sort of untested and was felt to be very difficult. I think this afternoon has proven that Calderdale can deliver a virtual planning committee in a very professional way. So I certainly wouldn't have any intention of using that provision, because, as I say, I think, you know, I think members and officers have worked really well this afternoon to deliver a planning committee that puts Calderdale in a good light in the current circumstances. So my view is that we will move forward with the pattern of virtual planning committees in the same way that we would have done physical planning committees.
Okay, thank you for that, Chair. Thank you for that, Richard. It just clarifies that point now, then.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Lynn. Councillor Lynn, yeah.
Oh, she's gone.
Oh, sorry. I'm aware that she's got to chair another meeting in a minute, so she probably has. Yeah. The idea of circulating the plans is a good one. If people have got more than one screen, like I have a large screen that I read the documents off as well as my iPad, it'd be quite good to be able to see the plans beforehand. I think it might be a problem if members have only got an iPad or something, then that might be difficult. Because, you know, it's about seeing it, but that certainly would have helped. I could have done that. And then you just talk us through and I can see the screens. Sort of in the way that we have the big screen on it in the meetings, and yet you've got it in front of you on the computer. You can look at it easy. So that's probably a good way forward for the next one. Anything else that people wanted to bring up?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Right.
And we'll see you at the next one.